Hey guys, this is Holly from HS Crested, and I'm here to show you how to make this. This is a lay box, and this is a very simple and cheap project to do. Won't cost you more than, if you already have the moss, which most of you do, to put in habitats. The only thing this will really cost you is 88 cents, something along those lines for the container. There are some things that aren't necessary in this project, but I will be showing them anyway, like how to make these little air holes on the side, which obviously you can tell you don't need that much, air holes or area for extra air to come out and go in. But, however, I'm still going to be going over it in case someone decides not to make this hole so large, specifically. And to help keep in humidity, I wouldn't use these if you have a hole this big. But anyway, I'm going to be showing you exactly how to make this, start from finish, show you how to cut this hole, and why I think moss is better than regular eco earth or something along those lines for laying substrate. So before I get started, I'm going to discuss a little bit about lay boxes and kind of explain why they're necessary, at least for female crested geckos. Around every month and a half or so, every gecko has a different laying schedule, but around that time they do lay eggs, especially if they're of proper weight. They do need to lay eggs, and if they hold on to them, if they don't have a place to put them, they will become egg bound, which is very bad and could actually result in the death of your gecko. So you need to provide some place for her to be able to lay her eggs safely, so she feels safe, and also for the safety of the gecko. Normally they would just dig in dirt, which if you have eco earth or some form of substrate in your habitat and you have a female, she will likely lay directly into the substrate. She may not even bother with the lay box, mainly because, she's got fresh dirt to dig through. She's going to prefer that. However, if you're on paper towels or something along those lines, this is an absolutely necessary thing for the health of your gecko, and to make sure that, she can obviously lay her eggs. She'll deposit them in the bottom somewhere. She'll bury deep, and she'll dig for a couple days before she finally lets them go. And you'll notice if your gecko is carrying eggs mainly towards the bottom of their body, they will have a little bit of a bump coming out. You'll notice in some thinner geckos, some females that are at a lower weight, they'll still lay eggs, especially if they've been bred before and they've lost weight. You'll be able to see the eggs physically in their body when you look at them. Some geckos, especially ones which are, a little heavier, a little chunkier, you might not notice it as much, but you will notice, especially when they lay the eggs. There will be a little bit of an indent left over from where the eggs were because they take up so much space in their body. So you will notice that when they're gone. If you notice she's looking thin, right above the base of her legs, she's probably laid eggs, so you'll need to check your lay box or around your habitat to make sure that you can find them, especially if you're breeding. You want to know where those eggs are, because those are little babies that you get to incubate until they hatch out. That is pretty much all the basic information you need to know about why a lay box is necessary. I won't go into specific details, mainly because I don't want this video to, last a really long time. I want it to be just simple and straightforward, not so much of a detail video, just how to make this, why it's necessary, and this is a fairly cheap project to do too, to make sure that your gecko stays healthy. So the supplies that you're going to need is obviously a storage container. This one I bought at Walmart. They come in packs of 2 for I think something ridiculous like 88 cents. They're around 4 or 5 inches tall, which you want that depth so they can feel safe digging down and covering themselves completely in either moss or whatever substrate you decide to use. I'll go over that in a minute. It needs, a pretty large space on the bottom. You want it to be, 5 by 4 inches, something like that. The top doesn't matter so much. It's, more for just looks. Also, if you do decide to keep the top on, it does help keep in humidity a lot. They want a very moist place that isn't like sopping wet to lay the eggs, because they want to ensure that, obviously, the eggs are going to continue and grow. So you need to keep humidity in, and that's why we use the plastic containers. You're also going to need some form of substrate to put inside of it. I prefer the terrarium moss, which, in my opinion, using moss is much better than using dirt or any other type of substrate, mainly because it holds onto humidity much longer. It's much softer. The moss itself doesn't stick to the eggs, so this is very important if you're, well, not very important, but it's relatively important if you're a breeder. You don't want, you know, dirty eggs. They come out almost completely clean with, obviously, you know, here and there a little bit of moss attached to it. And it just makes it very easy to get to the eggs because, you know, you don't have to dig and find them. You can pretty much see it through the bottom of the container, which is also why maybe a clear container would be the best option. At least keep the bottom clear if you want to paint the sides for, you know, privacy or whatever for your gecko. That's totally fine. But you will need moss. And of course now I have dirt on my table. And this part is completely optional, but if you do choose to add in some holes on the side, you can use a soldering iron to do that. This one I bought on eBay for, I don't know, maybe $8. It's pretty cheap, and you can do this for, you know, a bunch of different things, especially when it involves melting plastic for air holes. But like I said, this is completely optional. I'll probably go through and do it anyway. We'll just be adding some holes on the side towards the top for more aeration. And the other tools you're going to need are probably one of these razor knives or an X-Acto knife, something along those lines, or a pair of scissors. It's preferred that you use this because it's a little bit easier to cut into the top, like I'll be showing you later in the video. But if you don't have them, a pair of scissors should suffice. Last but not least, you will be needing a Sharpie or any form of marker so you can mark the top of your container to find out where you're going to be cutting. So let's get started. We have our container. Basically, this is really simple to do. What you need to do is you need to have, what I like to do is I like to use the top to my advantage. Whatever plastic is here, I use. So what I want to do is I want to make a little bit of a walking platform almost, so she can walk down into the bedding without going straight down. It'll also make it much easier for her to get out. So I want that to be almost as wide as the container. So I'm going to go along this inside line here and this inside line here. And then you want it to be rounded off a little bit, so you know the edges aren't too sharp. And then you're going to continue this line down a couple more inches and across. And this section here you're going to cut out. So that's going to go in the trash, but everything else stays. And this is going to turn into your walking platform. So essentially the only thing you need to do now is cut this out. And just cut along or near the lines that you made. This is much easier to do. Whoops! Much easier to do if you keep the top on the container so you have something to hold on to. And never cut towards yourself like I do. Do the smart thing, cut away from you. So you're going to pull that out while it's still attached. You can take your scissors or your X-Acto knife and just cut off this extra piece here. So then that piece goes in the trash and you'll end up with something that looks like this. You'll want to make sure that, you know, each end is cut evenly, so when it bends down it won't be odd on the sides. And you're just going to bend this down inwards towards the inside of the container. And I'm just breaking this a little bit further inwards so it really does go down. So you want it on an angle, and you can mess with it, bend the plastic a little bit to get it to where it's bending down pretty much like this. And what we're going to do is we're going to fill, you know, a little bit past this up to say here with moss. This way she'll have lots of room to dig around, hide those eggs, and get out of there and be done with it. So I'm going to plug in my soldering iron and let it heat up, and then we'll poke some holes. Alright, so this seems to have warmed up pretty much. So basically, you're only going to need to make a couple holes along the top. I'd say space them out within a couple inches of each other, but that's all you'll really need. They don't need to be larger than, say, a pencil hole or something similar to that size. They don't need to be too large. So as you can see with this, it goes in really easily, and it basically melts the plastic. As soon as you put it down, it starts to melt, and you just give a gentle push and it goes straight through. This makes it so the edges are rounded, so even if your gecko does get involved or around the holes, it shouldn't hurt them at all. Alright, so we unplugged this. It's starting to smoke because it has some plastic on it, which is fantastic. Let's see if I can wipe some of that off so I can not die because of smoke inhalation. That'd be great. Alright, well, I'm going to let that hopefully cool itself down on its own, and we'll take another look at this container now that all of these are completely dried and not going to burn me. We have all the holes melted in place. We have some, again, air holes that aren't completely necessary, but basically that's how you put it together. Fairly simple, and this way you can take the top off if you need to. You can get inside, dig for eggs. Basically, you're going to want to fill up to almost where the air holes are, but not quite. So I'm going to take some moss out of this box here. Hopefully not cause a giant mess. It seems like I'm already causing a mess. And you're going to break it up a little bit. Normally when it comes in these boxes, it's very dry, so it's going to need to be broken up just the slightest bit. Add some more. Keep adding. And the great thing with this moss is you can continue to use it over and over and over again as long as you rinse it off. If it goes moldy, I would suggest throwing it out because no one likes mold in their habitats, and it's not healthy for you, your gecko, anyone. It probably won't be the best thing. So keep it, reuse it, rinse it until it goes moldy. Then it goes in the trash. Oh hey, there's a pretty big piece of wood in here with moss growing on it. That's really cool, actually. Look at that. And it came in the container. So I could probably use that for decoration somewhere. I was wondering what that hard thing was that I kept digging into in the box. But anyway, now that I've made a complete mess, I'm going to move the box off to the side. This is pretty much everything. This is all of the moss that you'll need, and I'll show you why in a second. So this is even pushed down a tiny bit, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to see, but you can see the ramp here goes down into the moss, and the moss is just below where the air holes are. So this way extra air and moisture can come up and out. And also, if you want to help her and kind of show her where to dig, you can use your fingers to kind of move the moss around a little bit and make a little hole or indent right here so she can go straight down inside and bury herself underneath that, and she's good to go. So basically, you have your moss, your container, and everything, but what about moisture? And that's very, very fairly simple. You're going to take your mister. I have my pump mister here, and you know, with the spray nozzle, not so strong but also not complete mist because then it won't penetrate. You're just going to want to spray down the entire thing. And you want enough to where you can see that the moisture is starting to penetrate towards the bottom. However, you don't want any extra water collecting in the bottom. So you can, you know, kind of flip it upside down, look at the bottom and see, you know, is there any extra water dripping around in the bottom, because you don't want it to be dripping wet. That's way too wet then. And if you'll notice that there's still some dry stuff on the bottom, you can just flip this over, because you know the top is properly moisturized. You can flip it over, do it one more time, but not as much because there's already moisture in there. And then do the same thing, rearrange it around, make sure all of the moss is moist. It'll soak up water after, you know, a couple days of being in there. So if you look in the habitat and you notice, you know, if there's still no eggs, no one's digging around because they're either not interested or they're not in a laying schedule right now, you can, you know, re-mist it. And for the most part, especially if you have big-leafed plants, fake plants, real plants in your habitat and they create a lot of drippings, if you place this underneath a plant, it will collect the extra dripping waters inside of it, which is great because it'll keep it moisturized every time you mist, and in theory it shouldn't be too much. But like I said, every couple days check and make sure that there's not like a puddle of water on the bottom. Otherwise she probably won't use it. So guys, that's pretty much it. If you have any other suggestions for some DIY projects or any other videos involving crested geckos that you'd like to see, leave a comment down below and I'll do my best to try and put together a video. I'm kind of new to YouTube, if you couldn't tell, so editing videos takes a while, but I'd be more than welcome to make videos to help you guys out. So feel free to leave a like and subscribe. Bunny would appreciate it. Also check out my Facebook page, which is HS Crested on Facebook, and also Instagram. You'll be able to find me there too. You can also email me if you have any personal questions and would like to talk to me directly, which is hscresteds@aol.com. I know, who uses AOL anymore? But thanks so much for watching. Have a great day, guys!